So usually in a city building game, you invest in public transit to fix traffic jams and just reduce the overall car dependency. But what happens when your own questionable planning decisions create a tram jam? This is Zeeburg, and right now its most famous avenue is completely gridlocked. Not by cars, but by the exact trams that were supposed to get rid of the cars. Untangling this mess is going to get complex, so if you like complex, hit the like button, consider subscribing, and let's dive in. Oh, this is just proper terrible. Just look at the amount of trams queued up here. And this is just a random moment in time. I didn't wait for this to queue up to create a dramatic intro. Sometimes the queue is down here, sometimes it's a bit further into the city, but there's always some queuing up. And I think fixing this is going to require a lot of different approaches. I don't think there's like one easy fix that's going to fix all of it. Because ideally, I want to try to fix it without doing too many changes to this central avenue. Because having a double-track tram section moving through a very busy segment isn't super unrealistic. Plenty of cities have some really busy tram segments, including Melbourne, so there are definitely other places to start. And I think this intersection we're looking at right now is one of the main issues, because it takes a lot of space. And obviously, the trams won't enter this intersection before they know they have a full clearance on one of the other sides. And right here, that is a bit of an issue. This guy here just needs to go, because we're feeding a major highways, expressway thingy right into the heart of town, and I don't think that's necessary. So, yeah. Well, that was a bit of a drastic decision. I think I'm gonna keep the game paused for just a little while as we reroute what used to carry quite a bit of traffic, so it's obviously not rush hour currently, but it's a pretty important like arterial moving into the city. We're gonna grab this segment here and we're gonna upgrade, or I guess downgrade, this segment right here so that it just kind of continues. We don't need all these lanes. We don't need this segment either, we need to get this connection in place. And while an attempt to fix tram traffic is what led to this decision, I think overall it's just gonna be a good visual change as well. I think it's going to make this part of the inner city look a little more organic, because we can do something more interesting with this area than running a 5-lane expressway through it. But then being able to see the scars of bad planning decisions of the past is pretty realistic and adds a lot of fun narrative. So I think we might just keep this as like an open scar, now turned into a bit of a park or recreational space. Then maybe a bit of housing on this side. So let's just get a few connective roads added in. It's definitely a bit empty currently, but with a few tweaks and some proper realistic inclines, maybe a small park, it's all gonna look real nice, I'm certain. Now we're gonna fix this issue as well, because we still have like a full set of traffic signaling here, which is kinda gonna defeat the purpose. So let's grab the picker tool, we'll grab something narrow like the, let's see, we'll just grab this regular 2-lane road, I think. We're gonna downgrade this, removing 1 lane. We are also going to remove some bike paths. Oh yes, I know it's not ideal. We'll remove this segment here, because otherwise we're gonna have bikes attempt to move directly through the intersection, even as we're going to disallow making a left turn here. We're gonna disallow making a left turn here, so that we don't need any traffic signaling, and we can just have like continuous flow here. Which is, once again, kind of the purpose. We're trying to make sure that the trams can cross this safely and not wait too long. So with manipulation mode, let's just make this node a little smaller as well, like quite a bit smaller. You don't need like a massive sweeping curve to turn into this cozy little road. Also, we don't need this crossing anymore. I'm assuming this might cause issues for the trams if they can't make the crossing, if they can clear it fully. We can get rid of this one. We can utilize this one instead, I think. Although in very quick hindsight, this might just be the perfect location for a pedestrian overpass. Something I don't utilize enough. They're kind of intrusive and slightly ugly as well. But there is so much space here that feels a bit like a no-brainer. Wait a minute, this placement is all wrong though. I mean, we've got a crossing right here, which I can't really get rid of because I need people to be able to enter the median here to grab the tram in that direction. So I think this is easily fixable by just grabbing this fella here and moving him over here. Then we can get rid of this crossing. I do think it would be nicer though with a bit of symmetry in the stairs leading up to the overpass. So this is really some nitpicky stuff, but I'm gonna attempt to use a second one and just kind of splice that into it. Now this is obviously going to make the entire thing more bulky, so if you want to do this you really need the space for it. But fortunately we've got plenty of space here now that we've removed the awkward major avenue feeding into this intersection. Which, once again, is barely an intersection anymore. Not fully sold on this decision though, but I think for now we'll keep it. If it's too much of an annoyance for you guys, let me know. We might be able to figure out something else. Just gonna drag out this little net lane so that we've got some continuity in the design here. There is a suspicious amount of police helicopter activity around the place here, but then we did just place a depot in the previous episode and we are facing a bit of a crime wave, so I guess it all adds up. As for these changes, it should alleviate the cluttering slightly, but that is just by providing more space for the trams to kind of queue up. So it's not a fix by any means. The only way to actually fix the amount of trams along the corridor is obviously to just reduce the amount of trams on the routes funneling through here, but I don't think that's gonna be realistic because they are some of the more busy routes. Or alternatively, just completely reroute some of the routes, if I say route one more time, some of the lines so that they don't have to funnel through this place. But then again, it's not unrealistic for like a 2-track segment to have a ton of lines. Once again, Melbourne is an example of that, at least some of the corridors. So we might do that in the future in this episode. Yeah, that's a bit of a teaser, I guess. For now though, we're gonna spend a little bit of time alleviating this mess right here. So once again, the narrative is that there used to be a connection directly here. It's not a narrative, there actually did. We just removed it. But anyways, I want that to be visible. So I think we're gonna have some sort of cozy park, recreational space within this tiny block. And then perhaps a bit of redevelopment here. I mean, the city is very dense, and as you all know, there's like a ton of demand for new housing, so this might be a great location. And obviously it's gonna require a bit of detailing as well, and some proper road configurations. I think this has turned into one of those areas where if I walk by in real life, or maybe I just stumble upon it in Google Maps, I'd be curious to know what the actual history here is. Because you've got some older buildings mixed with some clearly less old buildings. And then as you move in behind this recreational space, you've got some very modern architecture. You've also got what looks to be like an empty lot that used to house a corner building of some sort. So it's definitely something that I feel adds a ton of realism. Of course, we Zeeburgers, Zeeburgers? Yeah, I guess, We know the actual story. We know this used to play host to like a major avenue connecting directly into this road here. And who would have thought that by redirecting this without doing any traffic analysis, I've got a queue building up here. Yeah, big surprise. I mean, I guess I did expect this to some extent, because obviously just removing the direct access point to the most prominent avenue of the city is going to funnel some traffic in another direction. Currently, they're trying to make a right turn here and go down what is a pretty cozy inner city street to connect up to this major avenue, which I don't think is ideal. But the question is whether we can realistically force them to continue along the major avenue here, because obviously that is going to be quite the additional distance. But I think we can if we just utilize some one-directional roads here. Let's just try that, because it's actually only this intersection we need to fix. This is already one-directional. So I think if I can steal this one, and let's see, we'll enable anarchy, we'll upgrade this in this direction here, so that this is still connected to a road, and services can actually reach this place. We'll need another one-laner, but I think in this case we're just gonna grab the regular vanilla one, this guy here, because then we've got two actual lanes going in this direction, so you can make a direct crossing, you can make a left and a right as well. But this should force all this traffic to continue moving down this main avenue, where the first right turn is this major intersection, which has plenty of capacity to handle all this inbound traffic. Now you can make a right turn a little earlier right here by the modern developments, but you can't make another right in hopes of utilizing Franklin Street to get onto the avenue here, because this is one directional. I want to say that's on purpose and a clever little configuration, but it's entirely coincidental that it actually turned out that way. So I'm assuming that most cars that actually make the right here do want to do something in this part of Alexandria. I hope. I mean, I can check what's the destination here. Oh, okay. So maybe that is not the case. We'll have to just kind of see if all cars utilizing the highway actually make a right here, because then we've got another issue, because then they'll just try to shortcut through Alexandria to reach other parts of the city, which we don't want. Yeah, so I tried to let the game run for a little while, but as you could probably tell, most of the traffic here at this point in time was actually outbound, which I guess makes sense. We're just past 3 in the afternoon, so outbound rush hour is starting to take into shape. We'll have to monitor and just kind of see what happens here. Now it does seem like Cooperfield Street, which yeah, definitely deserves a fancy rename. Avenue of the Princess. Yeah, we'll see how long this sticks before any change just kind of reverts it or gives it an all new name, which is so very annoying. Is slightly cleared up due to some of the changes we've made here, but we've got a couple of additional changes we can make before having to, I guess, redo everything here, which I hope I don't have to. So we're gonna pause, and actually let's not pause, let's just get rid of this little passage here. I don't mind having the old historic mansion here on the hilltop. I think it was a fun narrative to add, but it just, yeah, the road layout, or rather the pedestrian street layout here just didn't work fully, I feel. So I'm just gonna add something like this. Maybe we'll get like a little final roundabout added right here. We'll get rid of this segment. Can we do something fun here? Let's do, yeah, something like this. I think that's gonna work. We might even be able to add a bit of parking, because obviously we're gonna allow for car access now. But I think just by not having this additional intersection in place, that might also help clear out things a little bit. Fortunately, it does seem like the change we made to this tram stop, turning it into a 4 tram stop, is actually rather successful. We can have 2 trams here at the same time now, as long as they're not a part of the same line, obviously. We're even seeing it in action. So that was a very good decision. And it might be something we can utilize to fix some of these issues as well. We might be able to have some segments that allow for even more trams. I'm just a little afraid of cutting too much into the amount of traffic lanes here, because this place can get rather busy, at least it have in the past. Yeah, so I'm noticing a bit of an issue with this traffic signal right ahead of us. It doesn't seem like you are ever going to be able to make this left turn because it's never gonna turn green. So I've messed something up previously. I don't even recall setting up custom faces with the traffic light enhancement mod because I just don't really know how to use it. Oh, I didn't set up anything custom. I just have split facing plus protected lift. So I'm assuming the protected lift might be the part that's not really working. Because, yeah, the cars are just starting to like despawn now. So I don't see any lifts ever taking place here. Let's just try and change that to split facing and we'll see how that works. If they're ever going to be allowed to actually make the turn. No. It doesn't seem to be the case. If I change to vanilla, we're probably going to see it instantly start working, but also looking much more chaotic. Yikes. I mean, it did get things cleared up rather fast, so even though it's pretty ugly, it's a lot better than having any type of split facing, it seems. Ideally though, I should make custom faces for this bad boy. For now, I've just enabled the give way to oncoming vehicles, which does seem to make the flow here feel a little more realistic. It's not great though, so I'm gonna try to do some custom faces, but I'm not joking when I tell you guys that I have no experience with this mod, and I'm not great at traffic management either. Well, I guess you probably believe I'm not joking on that final part. If you're a subscriber, at least you will very much know that. Anyways, I'm gonna give it a go. It's gonna be a quick go, and it's probably gonna be very obvious afterwards that I'm gonna need some help. I'm gonna need some feedback. So any suggestions, any flow descriptions, or maybe just suggestions for a guide I can read is very much appreciated, but here goes nothing. So what I imagine might work is one dedicated phase for moving west to east. I should probably angle the camera like this so that it makes sense. West-east, one dedicated phase for north-south, and then potentially a dedicated phase for left turns. So from east to south and from west to north and the other way around. Something like that. Let's start with the north-south dedicated just go through, which I think would look something like this, I guess. I guess one issue here is that traffic has to kind of cross the tram tracks, but I don't want a separate phase for that. It's gonna become way too complex. I guess we could also enable right turns for this phase, as well as allowing for pedestrian crossings north-south as well. There is no right turn here, which is something I removed previously to just kind of clear up some of the traffic flow, but this should be the first phase, I think. So I can select dynamic or fixed timed. I'm not gonna mess too much about this. There's different templates as well. Oh, we're gonna go for a short responsive cycle. Yeah, that's it. Add. Oh, there's already a huge problem with this phase. I mean, if the tram or car that is parked here needs to turn left, then since there's just one lane for cars, one lane for trams, or one set of tracks that is, they're just gonna queue up people who would be able to go straight but can't because they're sitting behind. Yeah, I mean this is not gonna work, guys. I'm sorry. I'm gonna bail out. I'm gonna say vanilla, give way to oncoming vehicles. Yeah, and then I'm gonna need your help. We've got additional tram issues because of course we do, but this one is pretty bad as well. Now this is a tram on the ZTN1 line. It is waiting here until 22:00 because that is the scheduled departure for this specific vehicle from this stop here. and it's 21:58, so it's just gonna be like 2 seconds of in-game time. That's all fine. The issue is that the tram behind it, which is on the ZTN1 Express line, is running 30 minutes behind schedule because its next stop was due at 21:28, which is probably this stop here. That is just bad. So I think I'm gonna do what has been suggested a couple of times, which is either completely remove the ZTN1 Express line or drastically change it. And I think we can start off by drastically changing it and then seeing if that's gonna work. As always, I'm just gonna give a quick overview and my initial thought process for setting it up like this in the first place, so that you can suggest some feedback if you'd like to get involved. But the ZTN1 line basically makes a loop around the old cathedral in Old Town, and then it goes all the way up to the Stadium District. It serves every stop along the way, and as you can probably tell, it's fairly popular. The ZTN1 Express line, I added this mainly to serve Cambria and the Naval Hospital up here, because I think we need tram connectivity here as well, but it's just an area that is a lot less dense and it requires fewer vehicles. So my idea was that the Express line could serve the same main stops here where things are super busy, but then it would stop at the main train station at the Stadium District and so not go to this terminal station. And on the flip side, in the southern part of the city, it would continue all the way out to the Naval Hospital. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to reconfigure it so it makes a little loop here by the cathedral, and then it basically just goes from the cathedral to the Naval Hospital. And then in the future, we're probably gonna add a bit more housing in here to kind of just justify it. So it's gonna be like a very, very small line, although this presents another issue, because of course it does. I'm gonna need some feedback here. Let's imagine you work at the Zeeburg Naval Hospital, and you live in the northern part of Neuville, right here. And ideally, you don't wanna own a car, because it's not easy to own a car here in Zeeburg. So you would like to grab the tram. Okay, with my new plan, you'd grab it right here next to your workplace, which is perfect. But then you'd have to make a transfer here in Old Town to the ZTN1 line to then make another transfer here in Alexandria. Or can we assume that people would get off the tram right here? Because remember, with the new plan, the ZTN1 Express is going to actually make a turn here. It's just going to loop the cathedral. It's not going to move into Alexandria. So you'd have to get out here, and then you'd have to walk across the bridge into Alexandria to grab a tram, not at this stop, probably at this stop here. So that is at least like maybe a 6-minute walk. Is that something people would do? Oh, it's a bit tricky. I think we're gonna go ahead with this initial plan for the ZTN1 Express line, which is gonna turn it into a really small, weird line, but it's probably better than the absolute mess it's currently causing on this stretch. In terms of infrastructure investment, this one is pretty simple. We'll just need some dedicated tram tracks along this pedestrian street so that we've got a full loop around the cathedral, and then we'll need to see if we can find the ZTN1 E stops and remove these. That's gonna be a little tricky. There was one. On the surface, this does make the 4 tram track configuration we made earlier on this setup here just a little less useful, but not completely useless, because I imagine that, we still need trams to move through here without stopping, because we've got an actual depot right here. So I guess that's a nice thing, that trams will be able to move through here to enter one of the other lines without the ZTN1 kind of just backing everything up. Now removing the final stop in the north from the express line right here by the stadium. We can now make it loop around the cathedral, and I do expect the transit timetables mod to drastically reduce the amount of vehicles it's gonna calculate for this line now, given that the route is so very, very small now. So currently it's allocating 7. Yeah, it's gonna reduce that to 4, which is probably too much as well, but we'll see how the actual passenger count looks. We also had a stop here on the western side of the cathedral for the ZTN1 express line, but obviously we just need the one stop now that it's committing to a loop around the cathedral moving back, which is kind of fun because the ZTN1 line does the same, it just moves in the opposite direction. They now share the same stop here so that you can transfer from the express to the full line very easily. It is going to take a little while though for all the ZTN1 express line vehicles to clear out from the Avenue of the Princes. So as we wait for this to hopefully alleviate and look a little better in a couple of minutes, let's build something else. Yeah, we're gonna board a helicopter and move up north again beyond the city limits of Zeeburg to the cozy little town we built in the previous episode, where I've already gotten a ton of wonderful feedback. We needed some naming input, and this was a pretty tough call among a couple of really great suggestions, but Ralphinator's Gunterfeld felt right at home. I also just love how this suggestion actually takes the age of the town into consideration and acknowledges that naming it after a church might not be the right call since the church is from the interwar period, so it's not all that old. And this comment also suggested to pedestrianize a little bit of the heart of Gunterfeld, because it would be fitting. If it was a German town, it's not strictly a German town since Zeeburg isn't German, but for like a German Central European vibe, I think it fits just as well. So we're just gonna pedestrianize a few roads, which is a nice little invitation to just do a little bit of additional detailing here, adding a few more surfaces, because the next comment implementation is also going to be here in Gunterfeld. Yeah, it really is quite basic, but I think it adds a ton of character, at least compared to the previous look with very little detailing. So just getting the surface in place, adding a bit of an open spot where you can grab some food. Let's just make sure the color scheme here is the same. It's like a really nice addition. We've got a little food cart here as well. Very nice. For the next bit of input, we're moving slightly further north to the school here on the borders or boundary of the the school on the northern border of Gunterfeld. Yeah, so I looked for a bit of input here because I just choose to like randomly place it in the middle of a bunch of fields and a bit of forest without much reasoning. But I got this suggestion from Michal to actually just treat it as like an agricultural school of sorts. So I'm going to name it the Michal, I hope I pronounced that correctly, agricultural school. Also, there's been a bunch of feedback to provide bus access to this agricultural school, which I'm obviously just gonna ignore and go ahead and build something for trucks instead. Yes, because Danon suggested a distribution center located close by to highway access, and it turns out we've got some great custom assets from PDX mods to utilize for just this purpose. This is the modern industrial distribution center, and it comes in a medium version, which is already pretty sizable, at least in terms of in-game scale. Then there's the large version, and there's the extra large version, which is just massive. So I think in this particular case, I'm actually just gonna use the medium, although it's the slightly boring choice, I get that, because I'm gonna use the large version somewhere else, I promise. Now I want to place it so it kind of integrates with the small industrial estate that is already a part of Gunterfeld, and it is going to take a bit of farmland, of course. So let's just kind of align it right here. This one isn't just going to be a place and forget though, because I do imagine, as Danon also highlights in the suggestion, that nice integration with a nearby highway is going to be a necessity for a developer to actually choose this site in the first place. So obviously that is something we're gonna care about as well. So I do have a bit of a funky idea, and it has been a little while since I've done some proper crazy infrastructure, which I mean is kind of a bit of a trademark, I guess. I'm gonna use network tools to add another node here, and I guess we can utilize this one. Then we're going to upgrade this segment to a 2+1, which we're just gonna offset like this. Yes, already doubting myself here, so I know I'm on the right track. We're gonna treat this, or rather we're gonna turn this into an actual ramp moving on to the expressway. So something like this. Oh, we're just winging it right now. And then this ramp here is going to be a direct connection to the distribution center, which I am pretty confident the truckers are going to appreciate quite a bit. By the way, a quick note on these wonderful modern industrial warehouses, as I just make sure to add a bit of electricity. They actually come with a bunch of truck props already a part of them, so you don't have to do any detailing if you subscribe to the necessary dependency, if you add it to the playlist. I haven't done this because they are US themed, so they wouldn't fit quite as well in Zeeburg. It's no biggie, we can just add it on our own, but it's just a really nice little extra feature of these assets. I'm definitely just doing fun things now, but I'd like another access point. So we're just gonna branch straight out from this road here and get this connection in place as well. For good measure, I'm adding my classic trademark useless alleys into the asset, just to have some actual intersections here leading into them, which I think just makes so much sense. I usually just name these like a dot, so that it's the least intrusive naming I can come up with, since unfortunately I can't remove the name completely. We do have rail tracks right nearby, but I'm just not sure that's something that's utilized all that much in like a modern distribution warehouse like this one. So I'm not too keen on doing any type of rail integration as it currently is. I am gonna add just a few additional roads though, so that there's a bit of space here for a few additional industrial developments, some warehousey type stuff and the likes, just to kind of bump the job count and the overall amount of activity out here. Just doing like a super quick employee count, it seems to cap out at around 420 new workplaces, new employees, which is a really nice addition. I think in total now we're looking at somewhere in the range of 1,100 jobs out here in Gunterfeld to a population of 1,500. So it's quite the economic engine. And I think it's really nice because when we built this town in the previous episode, we did talk about making it an economy on its own. It's not super dependent alone on just Zeeburg. People actually move here, they want to live here. This is also why the school is relatively modern. But if that is the case, it should probably also feature some actual modern developments to cater to young families wishing to move out here, because obviously there's no modern housing stock in Gunterfeld currently, so it's just kind of limited. There's only so much housing here, unless someone was to buy up a bit of farmland and build some cookie-cutter modern housing, such as this field, right next to the agricultural school, but more importantly, right next to the elementary school, and pretty small and limited, I guess, in yield or harvest. I think it's yield, right? That's the right word. So let's get rid of this. Assume that the farmer has sold it to a property developer and build something fancy instead. Actually, it's not going to be fancy at all. It's just going to be some low density stuff. So we're going to get some of that into Zeeburg, and it's a fun process to actually get started with, because it's just the first of many of these types of projects. I'm just doing a very, very quick and simple road layout just to get a bit of space for placing these houses. It's going to be a bit of an experiment, but I'm going to try to use Grooney's French-themed low-density residential houses for this. These are probably a little more traditional than what I'm intending to use them for here, but I'm hopeful that with a bit of recolor, I might make it work. It's just to experiment, basically. So yeah, it's just gonna be the same type of house again and again and again. So how do I make these look more modern? Well, as mentioned, recolor is gonna have to do the bulk of the work. And I think having like a black roof tile is a pretty good step in the right direction. Maybe making the house a little off-white, something like this. It's less cozy old terracotta roofing and more like modern black roofing. I think this works just fine. And we can still utilize this very same asset for like older, more rural areas as well in the future, because they're recolorable and it just changes so much. I want to keep things simple, so we'll feature just a little bit of dedicated guest parking, something like this, and then maybe a playground or like a little dog park or something. We're gonna plant a ton of trees because this is something that Zeeburg actually tries to prioritize in modern developments, which is more than can be said for most places around the world. But we're gonna keep them fairly small, assuming that this area isn't all that old. Maybe it's like 10 years old or something like that. So things really haven't gotten the chance to like fully grow yet. They have made sure to like keep some of the spruce trees around on this lot though, that they didn't have to remove, especially near the expressway, so that's always nice. And that is pretty much it. This is an area that needs to look distinctive, but mainly from a distance. Ideally, you can mass produce these, at least if you're trying to achieve like a somewhat realistically scaled city. And I think as we zoom out, it's very obvious that it's a type of development and architecture that is very distinctive from the like original heart of Gunterfeld. Quickly added another one of these small developments, this time on the other side of the train tracks. I think it's fair to assume this one is slightly older maybe than the first development we built in the northern part of Gunterfeld. The trees are at least older because they're just more grown. And as we just zoom out and have an overall look, I think these additions are really nice. They add a ton of character to Gunterfeld, really help take it from a pretty generic small town to something that is very much unique in the context of the Zeeburg metropolitan area. At least for now, we might get additional towns in the future that have some of the same features. But then zooming even further out and moving back to the tram clustered avenue, I'm interested in seeing how things are looking. Yeah, I mean, this stretch is still very much a problem because despite removing the Zetian 1 express line, we've still got the Zetian 1, which is super busy, as well as the Zetian 4 line, competing for the very same set of tracks. The Zetian 4 is the one that branches off at this point and moves north. As you can probably tell, it moves all the way up to Monterey, and it's the same line that moves south and serves Neuhafen. So I'm tempted to try something here that is probably a little weird and a little wonky. So yeah, once again, I am very much open to feedback. Yeah, I'm gonna really need feedback on this one, which I've said a couple of times during this episode, but yeah, things are gonna get even more weird now. In short, my plan is to use this as a template for a new version where instead of this being a shared bus car lane, it's going to also allow for tram tracks. Shared with the traffic, it's not gonna be dedicated tram tracks because I don't want to reduce the amount of traffic throughput here too much. Or maybe I do, I don't even know by this point. This is where we're gonna start at the very least. And we're gonna call this the, let's see, it's gonna be a 4-track tram, 32, yada yada yada. I've done the very same thing with this version with the central platform here. Once again, renaming it slightly, still 32 meters wide. Now the final bit is actually just this segment here, which is its own configuration since it's a 5+2. But I think it's gonna work much the same. we should now have all the new weird pieces we need. So let's just grab the picker tool and make sure we upgrade all of these throughout. Also, I'm gonna use lane connector to make sure that we don't have all of these connections in between the tram tracks, because obviously it's gonna look a little rough. Then on second thought, this place is just a little too complex. So I think if we commit to this upgrade, go into network tools and get rid of this node here, it's probably better. Although I do need to make sure we've got one of the crosswalks in place, of course. With the lane connector tool, I should be able to remove most of these weird crossings between the tram tracks. I might not be able to remove all of them. Sometimes it's just a little iffy. I'm gonna remove U-turns and unsafe and all that stuff as well. But yeah, it doesn't seem like I can remove all of these crossings, and I guess that's just how it is. I've really no clue how this is gonna work or look, but we're gonna have a go. So I'm adding stops at around the same places, just for the new tracks as well. So this is going to allow us to basically completely separate the ZTN1 and the ZTN4 line, which is hopefully going to cause result in a bit of a difference here. I can only imagine it will, because I mean, it is these two lines kind of competing over the same set of tracks and stations that's causing the issues here. The final piece of the puzzle is obviously just making sure that we've got the proper stops set up for each of these two lines here, which I can tell you was fairly tricky, but I just kind of removed all the stops here, and there's not even a conflict here now. I mean, it's a mess. Just look at the amount of tram tracks here, but I think it's gonna work. So we've got the stops in place here on either side. We just need the final stop right here. All right, let's hit play on this weird experiment and see how it all pans out. Maybe this is the correct angle. Alright, so I guess the conclusion is that from strictly speaking a gameplay perspective, this solution does work. There is no tram cluttering whatsoever along the now slightly more complex Avenue of the Princes. In terms of aesthetics or realism, I mean, maybe it works as well. If we just disregard these two dedicated tram tracks, then this is basically just a regular 4-lane avenue with some shared tram tracks. I think the main issue, of course, is the amount of complexity we see when you reach like a major junction. I mean, this intersection just got even more complex, and it was complex enough to begin with. Although I gotta say that just enabling the give way to oncoming vehicles option in the traffic light enhancement mods really makes quite the difference, even with just a vanilla configuration. Because as you can probably tell, they actually wait in a more realistic manner. They don't drive into each other, although some of the drivers now seem a little too aware, too omnipotent. They can just kind of see vehicles coming from all directions. Yeah, but it's a bit of a compromise. Let's just say that. It also does seem to be improving the actual timetables or the abilities of these trams to reach their stops in due time. This ZTN4 tram was scheduled to stop here at 06:01, so it got here about 2 minutes early. Obviously, in-game time is a bit weird, but it at least made it on time. That's certainly the case, and that seems to be the case with most trams. We've still got some on the ZTN1 line that are slightly delayed, but things are starting to clear up. Once again, I'm very much open to feedback on this specific setup, because I'm sure that there are like other types of configurations we could make, especially if we are willing to just kind of reduce the amount of traffic lanes. But I thought it would be a fun challenge to not do that and then see what we've got here to work with. Something we could do if we stick to this setup though, is we could encroach a bit on the pedestrian space to gain a bit more like room for maybe a dedicated tram track or two, because the sidewalks here are 6 meters wide, and they don't need to be that. They can be 3.5 each. And then if you also reduce this median to just 1 meter instead of 2, then suddenly we're looking at like a gain of, is that 6 additional meters? So that is something we could use to make some of these tram tracks dedicated, while I think almost having the same amount of traffic throughput. Let's just test this. So I'm gonna make sure I select it and say use as template, because this is a new configuration. I don't want to override this one. What we're gonna do is, let's see, we need the dedicated bike lanes, I think, because that's just a nice feature. So we're gonna reduce this to 3.5, the lowest it can go. We're gonna do the very same over here. Then we're going to reduce the width of this median to 1 meters. And this has now bought us quite a few meters to reach the same 32 meter road width. And I guess we could technically go a little wider here because we do have the space. But let's just see how this is gonna pan out. I'm just gonna pause. We'll add one dedicated tram track. And we can change this to just a regular car only lane. We're still just sitting at 29, so we should be able to squeeze in one additional dedicated tram track. And change this once more just to like a regular non-tram section. Let's, I mean, it's not terrible. I think the sidewalks are very, very narrow now, but then once again, I guess the main aspect here is that the buildings are kind of pushed back from the road, so it doesn't really matter, because then technically this is sidewalk as well. Something I don't like about this configuration is the fact that these tram tracks, it's not so clear that they're like dedicated, but obviously there are ways around that. We could use some of these net lanes or like a specific surface, for instance. But I think another problem I haven't really considered is that if we utilize this throughout all of these segments, then as soon as we reach a segment where we need the wide median here to enable these stops, then we run into some issues because we're just not gonna have the space here. But we would probably have the space if we just go with a one dedicated tram track from the Zetien 4 line and then just having one shared tram track. Let's try that as well. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff to there's a lot of things to check on here, but so basically my idea is that this section here, which is running north out of town, basically is going to be shared with the regular vehicles, so that the section moving into town is going to be dedicated. And my logic here is that usually it seems like there's more pressure on these car lanes here moving into town than moving out. I don't know if that's actually the case, but that seems to be the case at least. And this is also why the configuration down here is with an extra turning lane. If we did something like this, we suddenly have a bit of wiggle room, like we can get a small 1 meter median in to really make it clear that this is a separated bike tram track, as well as these two. And we've got a bit of leftover space to even increase the width of the sidewalks by 1 meter on either side, so it looks a little less weird. The compromise in this case with the wider segment is that we would have to just have one lane of traffic moving north, and it's going to be a shared lane as well. So it's going to be shared with trams, which might cause an issue. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about anything, in fact. For now, I'm just going to keep the initial configuration where we don't have any of these tracks dedicated. So I'm just going to select this one here and say place more, and we'll just downgrade this. Yoink. And we're gonna stick with this until I get some feedback. And I know the most obvious feedback would be, maybe you should just reroute one of these lines and have like an additional entry path into the city. And we may have to do that in the future if we continue adding additional tram lines. But I would like to be able to just have the main avenue, like Avenue of the Princess, actually being able to handle 2 busy tram lines. It has to be possible. But that's all, folks. Thank you guys so much for watching, all the wonderful feedback and suggestions, and for bearing with me in these complex, dark transit times. I hope to see you all in the next one, and goodbye.